Well, guys, I'll kick us off here. So, long story short, I view myself, I think the way a lot of sales leaders view themselves, which is they have the natural talent and sort of the DNA to be a sales leader, but not all of us have taken the time to go through formal training in all the aspects of people leadership or performance-based leadership like sales leadership. And I reached out to Jeff about this topic, Jeff Schneider from Sandler Training, who's somebody I've known for about 12 years now, who has a great reputation in the Portland and now Mexican market.
Un poco solamente.
Right. And he suggested that we actually turn this into an event and invite others to learn as well. And so Jeff asked his friend and colleague Thomas Cox to join, who is an expert in this process and a what I know to be a very disciplined sales leader. And so we're going to talk about it. We're going to go through the steps of a performance improvement program. And this is meant to be interactive, so I encourage you to ask questions and get involved. And the less that we PowerPoint you, the better. We really want this to be a full conversation. Jeff, can I hand things over to you?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Tell me when to go to the next slide, and I got you.
Yeah, go to the next slide, please.
Okay.
All right. So I am, for the last 17 years, a Sandler trainer and have been helping salespeople, sales managers, executives, entrepreneurs improve their selling performance. Thomas, why don't you give a little bit of an introduction for yourself?
Yeah, Thomas Cox. I was originally a database architect, very technical-minded, terrible with people. And about 20 years ago, I decided I needed to fix that. I started focusing on what makes teams work and how do you define success for a manager or for a team. And then lately, I've been asked by my clients to help them put managers as well as workers on performance improvement plans. Since COVID, it's been harder to know, are people doing what you need them to do and how can you tell? And doing that ethically and well in a way where the person you're assessing feels like you're doing an honest, fair, good job for them and you're really on their side is a tremendously important thing. Because you owe it to your organization to deliver the results of your unit. You've got to make sure all your people are performing. And that includes challenging them and sometimes putting them on pips. But if you aren't really good at doing that, you can harm performance more than you help it, which is why a lot of folks hold back on doing that. So I decided to figure out, how do I crack the code and make the PIP process be something that you and the person you're targeting can actually look forward to as something that makes everybody better. That was my organizing principle 6 months ago when I started on this.
Radical idea. I love it, Thomas. We want to hear more about some of his thoughts on this. As a former sales manager, I was a sales manager in the media business, television stations, radio stations. And, I'd had anywhere from 6 to 12 sales reps reporting to me. And at any point in time, when you have 6 to 12 reps, there's a couple who are underperforming. There's a couple that you're looking at saying, is this person going to make it? They're not really pulling their weight. And so they get put on a PIP, a performance improvement plan. And what is a PIP? It's just a formal plan that says, you're underperforming and we need to get your performance up and here's what is required or expected in order to do so. Pros and cons. Well, it's a last-ditch effort often to try and save a rep. We call this resurrecting the rep purposely because it seems like the rep may be dying on the vine, but is there a way to actually resurrect them? Thomas will enlighten us on some ideas here, best practices. The con, I would say, is it seldom works. Most of the time when we put somebody on a PIP, it's because the sales manager has given up believing in that rep. And we do it because HR requires us to do it because lawyers got involved and said, this is what you have to do before you fire somebody. So therefore, it's kind of code for we're about to fire you. So get yourself ready and start working on your resume. And what ensues is a lot of unproductive time and behavior. Thomas, what would you add?
Yeah, I would add that that is what most people think of it when you tell them performance improvement plan or PIP, is that it's going to be one of these kabuki theater fake exercises where you pretend to try to help them while you're really just covering your own ass so you can fire them without getting sued. And the reason you don't want to do it that way, in addition to the fact that it will suck your soul and make you feel bad about yourself, it actually undermines the morale of everybody else on the team, because you are engaging in duplicitous behavior. Over 40 states actually legally require that an organization make a good faith effort. It's called the good faith clause. You must make a good faith effort to help someone perform before you fire them. And one of these performative fake theater PIPs, it's the opposite of a good faith effort. It's like, I've given up. I don't know how to do a good PIP. I have to, fill out the stupid form and go through this meaningless process I don't understand in order to get permission to fire you, as opposed to, hey, I'm about to threaten your addiction to food, clothing, and shelter for you and your family. This is a big deal. I'm going to take it as seriously as you will. And I really want to save you. It's up to you to save yourself. Let me meet you halfway. And if you can do that ethically and clearly, everybody else will go, wow, I'm glad I'm not on one. But if I am on one, I know they'll treat me properly. And you can sleep well at night knowing you've done a good job. And so this really, as soon as I got into the topic, I knew that it was an area where, done badly, it just is so toxic. It makes the entire organization complicit in a trust-destroying activity. I want to pause and point out that trust is built on 3 pillars. If you don't know the academic research on this, I can point it to you. We trust people if they keep their word, right? If they are highly competent, and if they are benevolent enough to be on our side at least some of the time. And if you think about anybody you trust them in part because you know they can do their job, you know they keep their word, and you know that they are not working against your interests. And when you do one of these fake PIPs, you undermine all 3. You say it's good faith, but it's not. You look incompetent because you don't know how to do a proper PIP, and it's completely self-serving.
Yeah.
I can think of no worse way to harm people's trust. And this is all the people who are staying with you. Believe me, if you think that the person on the PIP is the only one who knows about it, no. But they're going to bitch to all their friends at happy hour. They'll talk on social media, whatever, and as they should, frankly. A low quality, bad faith PIP is absolutely evil, and you should never do one. I guess that's my sermon for the afternoon.
Tell us how you really feel, Thomas. Next slide, please. All right, so we've developed some stages in the process, and begins with awareness, and then we look for some evidence. There's a confrontation, which feels like a strong word, but I'll kind of unpack that a little bit. After the confrontation, the presentation of facts, there's their response, a plan for resolution, some encouragement, ongoing accountability, probation, finally termination. Obviously, we don't want to go through all 9. We want to find a way to resurrect the rep before we get to those lower stages. Next slide, please. Begins with awareness. And as a former sales manager and somebody who's worked very closely with sales managers, this awareness is always the first, step towards healing or enlightenment. And so the old adage, hire slowly, fire quickly, agree? I think most of us would say, yeah, we want to spend as much time in the hiring process to make sure that we have the right person. But this idea of firing quickly, we're going to kind of challenge that today. And so some questions to consider. If you're a sales manager or a business owner, what triggers you to suspect you might have a problem? So I remember having a sales rep, and he just didn't seem to be working many hours. And this was in Bend. He was talking about all the time up at Mount Bachelor on his snowboard, and he seemed to be meeting people at happy hours at 3, right? And so I started to then look at numbers to see if the numbers were accurate. So we oftentimes, the sales manager doesn't trust himself or herself. Doesn't trust their intuition, their gut, or the data that they're looking at, and therefore they're reluctant to do anything, or even to begin to entertain the idea that there may be a problem. And also another question, are you slower to notice if this is your hire versus your predecessor's hire? If you're fairly new on the job and you inherited other people's salespeople, you might look at them critically and begin to assess whether you have the right person or not. But after you've made a couple of hires, oftentimes the sales manager is really just hoping that this person's going to work out because it might reflect badly on them. Awareness. Next slide, please.
Real quickly, does anyone have any questions or anybody want to weigh in? Like, as a small business leader and former sales manager, I have these feelings all the time, and I try to sweep those feelings under the rug sometimes. Anybody else go through that?
The only thing that comes to mind for me is it seems like every time that I put a person on a PIP, no matter what the reason is, they almost immediately are done themselves and they start looking. How do you get that mindset to change that, hey, this is actually to help you and make them believe it?
Thomas?
Well, it's a mixed bag, because if you're noticing the early signs of non-performance and the minute you say PIP, they're looking for something else, it might be because they're infected by our cultural tendency to view PIPs as these like bad faith exercises, and they think that this means they're doomed. And so when you actually tell them about it, which is a later phase, you want to come in with, hey, look, I got some evidence that's got me worried about your performance. I really want to improve things. I believe in you, and here's why I believe in you, and here's what you will need to do to turn yourself around. Do you really think you can do it? And so when you drop the PIP on them, you need to be doing it in a way, and we'll talk about that in more detail in another couple slides, in a way that shows you've got faith in them. If you don't have faith in them, you need to tell them that as well. It's like, I'm really doubtful here, and it's not my job to decide you can't do it. The job is yours to succeed or fail, and I will give you every help I can. And honestly, given your level of, say, product knowledge or your work ethic or whatever, I'm not seeing how you pull it out, but I'm not going to fire you. I'm going to give you the chance. And if you want to get your affairs in order and quit before you're fired, that's of course your prerogative as well. Does that answer your question, Cody?
Cody, I used to.
Yeah, that did.
I used to, prior to understanding Thomas's methodology, tell a rep who is struggling that I really should be putting you on a PIP now, but I seldom see success when I do that. So what I'd like to do instead is have a 30-day pre-PIP come to Jesus meeting, you and me, in which I'm going to double down my effort to help you, and I want you to double down your effort. And we're going to be talking every single day, and I want you taking me on sales calls. I want to turn this thing around with you. All right. And I just need your commitment that you're going to. So in essence, what I was doing was kind of putting them on a good PIP. Let's not formally write this thing up.
Yes, rather than try to save them from the bad reputation of that word.
That's right.
No, I'm not going to put you on a PIP. I'm just putting you on notice.
Yeah, but I was real clear. I should be putting you on a PIP, but I don't want to do that because that seems like the kiss of death. Why don't we work together for the next 30 days, and I'm betting we can turn this thing around. And I just give it a shot.
How often does that work for you, Jeff?
I don't have data. I'm going to guess less than 25%, say 15, 20%.
Okay. Yeah. And the rest of them, they just admit that they're not up for it,
or they weren't. They don't admit it, but they just weren't.
They behaved themselves out of a job.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Second phase is evidence. So what is actually taking place and what is not taking place and why? So and when it says evidence, it's like it almost looks like you're trying to indict them, right? So we're purposely using some slightly inflammatory terms here, but all we're looking for is data, really. What does data seem to indicate? Now, this can get very complicated because you may just really not like your rep or have some bad feelings or resentment towards them. There could be a personality conflict, and we have to separate that out here. We're really looking at performance, results, and behavior. Now, sales managers always focus on results. They're always looking at the pipeline, at what's closed and how it compares to quota. But I think you have to go back into the behavior because results are a lagging indicator. Behavior is a leading indicator. If they're going to turn this thing around, there has to be a change in the quality and quantity of behaviors that they're engaging in. And so in Sandler, we call this cookbook behaviors. How many cold calls are they making? How many network events? How many LinkedIn invitations, right? What is it that they're supposed to do? What are they actually doing? Because that's going to be key to turning this thing around. Now, if what we're finding is a shortfall, not only in results, but in the behavior, this needs to be documented, and we need to be asking questions, and we need to kind of be turning up the heat a little bit in terms of pressure. This is a conversation I have quite a bit with my sales managers. It's not whether or not you should manage with pressure. It's what's the optimum level of pressure at any point in time with any particular rep in order to get the best results and effort from them. And so I'm slowly turning up the temperature, the scrutiny, and shortening the leash so that they know that I am serious about them doing what is necessary to get better results. Also, I strongly recommend ride-alongs at this point, whatever ride-along looks like, right? You have to inspect what you expect. And I can't tell you how many times I thought to myself, well, maybe the rep's struggling. I went on a couple calls. It's like, oh, geez. All of a sudden it becomes clear when you actually watch what they're doing.
Question, Jeff. So results is listed on here, and you talked about that being a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
Is our results evidence, or is it everything else leading to the results that are the evidence?
All of it is. Absolutely everything is. Are they picking up the phone? Are they making their outbound calls? Are they replying to messages? Are they sending out proposals timely? Are they following up on proposals? It's like there's a lot of behavior that a rep has to put out, and it varies obviously by your sales model. But if you do the behaviors and you do them with some quality, you will get sales.
Right.
And most of the time, it's either a lack of behavior or it's low quality behavior in one of these, areas down the pipeline. It's remarkably mechanistic. And in some ways, it's the easiest thing to manage. It's just also one of the hardest things to do well, which is why sales pays well. It's hard to do.
Results are probably the first clue, though.
Yeah. And as soon as you got the inkling, well, you should be managing everyone on numbers anyway. Like if you're not tracking like outbound calls, for heaven's sake, start tracking it. But I want to emphasize the importance here. If you want to do a highly ethical, above board, high trust building kind of PIP, you've got to separate opinion from fact. And the problem that most of us have is and this is from my source here is Jennifer Garvey Berger, a researcher. She says, you can't tell the difference in a brain scan between somebody having an opinion and remembering a fact. So you never want to do either one. You want to source your facts. You want to source your facts. Like, it really seems to me like you're struggling with outbound calls, but you haven't got any numbers. Screw it. Go track everyone's numbers, have leaderboards for every number if necessary. I mean, you should be doing that anyway. Come on, pick it up. Because you doing your job better is one of the side effects of doing the PIP really well. And if you're like, well, I haven't really been tracking this, okay, here's your chance to start tracking it better and more proactively and be the better manager who deserves better performance from better people.
Yeah, I talk a lot about accountability culture. And accountability culture for sales managers means that you're ready for every single one-on-one. You're prepared, not in a micromanaging, tough sort of way, but you're just prepared to you've already looked at the data. You already know what questions you want to ask. Ideally, what a sales manager is doing in one-on-one is that they're looking at results, they're backing up to behavior, they're comparing expectations with reality. Like you said, you're going to make 100 cold calls. You made 100 cold calls. Our guess was you're going to have 20 conversations. You only had 7. Okay, there's a ratio discrepancy. What's going on? See, now you can coach, you can mentor, you can role play, you can get into the nitty gritty and help them improve this bottleneck in the factory before you move on to the next ratio. But until there's behavior on a consistent basis, you can't really do that. So, Adam, next slide, please.
Okay.
So confrontation. Confrontation is funny. It just sounds like a bad word. And many people can't stand the thought of confrontation, either on the giving or the receiving end. But I like to call it being carefrontational. I care enough about you that I'm just going to tell you the truth, or I'm going to ask you real questions and expect real answers. And as a sales manager, I sometimes felt like the most important sales call of the week for some of my salespeople was the one-on-one with me. If they could survive the one-on-one and kind of paint a picture, a narrative of what's going on and what's not going on, excuses and so on, whew, all right, they survived another week. And I'm not trying to be too negative here. I'm not saying that's true of most of my salespeople, but a confrontation is simply where you get agreement to discuss performance. And so it might sound like, Adam, I want to be candid with you today about what I'm seeing in terms of results, and also about what I'm observing and what my hunch is about what's taking place. But then I want to hear from you, from your perspective, to what extent you agree or if you see things differently. Is that okay? Call that an upfront contract. So we get agreement, we get permission to be able to discuss this. And I just lay it out. Over the last 6 months, it looks like you've been anywhere from 87 to 63% of your goal, but you haven't hit it. And as I've been looking at the behavioral numbers, they kind of track that same ratio, somewhere in the mid 60s to the mid 80s in terms of the behavior versus what your actual cookbook prescribes. And I think it may have to do with time management because I've observed A, B, and C. That's my thinking, right? And so I'm not saying it in a judgmental way. I want to point out, I'm not saying you do this and you don't do that. It's not an accusation. It's simply a positive declaration of what you're observing, right, followed by a question of what they see, because they may see it differently.
Another way of thinking of it is if you've got, let's say, different scenario completely. Someone's driving a truck and they have to back it up and they can't see, and you're out behind them and you're saying, okay, a little bit left. Okay, you got 6 feet left. Keep a little to the right, and you're giving them information that they don't have direct access to help guide their behavior. That is really what you want to be doing here. And if you're afraid to confront your low performer, have this same conversation with your top performer. It'll go great because you're delivering the same numbers, but it's good news. And say, hey, what are you doing that's working best for you? How is it you're at 120%? Where do you see it? What have you learned recently? What do you like? Which of your ratios is blowing everybody else's ratio out of the water, and why are you so good at that? And when you are talking to everyone routinely about performance, talking to the low performer, you're more practiced.
That's a good point.
And when you're unsmooth with your top person, they'll forgive you because it's good news. And if I'm stuttering while giving you good news, you're very patient with me.
Adam, you had a point.
Yeah, I have a question about accepting excuses or shifting blame.
Yeah.
So 21 and 22 were exceptionally good years in a lot of the business community, and 2023 was difficult. So you have a confrontation with a rep who's underperforming. Let's just say they're now underperforming. They say, well, the market fell apart. My customers, their budget is tied up. Are you having the same conversation with Sarah or Joe? How do you navigate those waters when there are macroeconomic factors in place?
Well, if it's affecting everybody.
I'm going to take an ignorant shot first before Jeff answers, because Jeff will correct all my errors here. But I would say, am I talking to all the reps? Yes, I talked to Sally, I talked to Jeff, I talked to you. My conversations with them are for them. My conversation with you is for you. And we all see the macroeconomic picture. And as you'll recall at the beginning of the year when things started to turn south, we said you're going to have to pick up your call volume. You're going to have to do this. You're going to have to do this. Because, yes, circumstances change and we must change in response to that. Jeff.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair, Thomas. If everybody on the team is underperforming, then it becomes much more difficult to confront one person, right? And it's probably not appropriate. I'm making an assumption here that number one, results are falling short, particularly for one person on the team, whereas for other people, results are solid or acceptable. Mm-hmm. And in addition, their behavior is falling short. See, when somebody is doing the behavior necessary to be successful, but they're not producing the results, that could be on me, the sales manager. Perhaps I haven't trained them or provided the resources necessary. So I always want to
Yeah, they don't handle objections well. They don't understand the material, the collateral. We changed the product line but didn't train them properly. There's all kinds of ways we could be falling short. And if they bring that up, we should say, oh my God, you're right. Good faith conversation. And if I really can improve what I'm doing as the manager to help them perform better, isn't that my job?
Yeah, that's right. So I want to confront their role performance while affirming their identity as much as possible. This is falling short. This number needs to be higher. But I believe in you. I know that we can do it, right, to the extent that you believe it. Affirm their identity while confronting the role performance. Be strong regarding who's responsible for what. Strong meaning there are certain things that maybe I'm responsible for. Maybe I haven't provided the training. Maybe I haven't gone on enough calls with them, right? But if I don't want to accept excuses or shifting of blame where I know that it's their responsibility. So when they're not doing the behavior, right, we have to have a conversation where we say, this is the minimum behavior necessary, though, for you to get where you need to go. What will you do to correct that? That's what I mean by being strong there and not accepting excuses. Without behavior, I just don't have hope in them overcoming this. Next slide, please.
And I stuck into chat for everyone's use a really great quote from Adam Grant on how he likes to introduce this kind of confrontation. He says, I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations and I'm confident you can reach them. I'm here to coach you and help you.
It's excellent.
Anyone have any thoughts or questions or comments on the confrontation? Cool.
It's okay to be nervous.
Yeah.
That's right. Do it anyway. Now, when you're confronting, I have a little formula here for truth telling. Our Sandler rule is if you feel it, say it gently, right? Speak the truth in love. If you feel it, if you're starting to get a sense that there is a problem and you've got some evidence, then you need to say it, but we want to say it in a gentle way. So first, get permission. Hey, Thomas, is it okay if we have a conversation, maybe 15 minutes, very important conversation about where you're at, your performance, your results, and see if we can come up with a plan to be able to boost the performance. Are you okay with that? Then you share your perspective, ideally using I language, not you language. What I see is data point. What I'm concerned about is gap or delta. What I believe might be behind it is my opinion or speculation, but I'm very soft on this, right? And then we unattach, meaning, okay, that was my part. It's like a deep breath. And then we turn to them and say, can you please share with me your perspective? Because I really want to understand what you're thinking and feeling. And if I'm off base in any way, I'd like to know, right? That way, this is a dialogue. I'm not being authoritative. You know, as a sales manager, you have power and authority. You should seldom use it. You got promoted into sales management because you're a good seller. You have good people skills. You're persuasive. Continue to use those skills as long as you can. Seldom go to power and authority.
Correct.
Next slide, please. Now they're going to have a response. What's going to happen? Boy, I've seen all kinds of things here. I've been told I'm the worst sales manager on the planet. I'm unfair. I'm anti this. I'm prejudiced against that. I mean, I've heard all kinds of stories. Shifting of blame. It's my fault because the territory wasn't good. But you have to bite your tongue here. Even be careful about your facial expressions. Try and remain open-minded and non-judgmental and really fight for understanding. Listen. Listen closely. Don't interrupt. Take notes. Don't counter. Save it for later. Ask them to clarify. Push the HTML hyperlinks. What do you mean? Help me with that. Can you like tell me a little bit more about that? Be like a good reporter or a podcast host. You're just trying to learn. Get clarification. Try and remain open-minded and be a learner here, not a judger.
Yeah, and if you can think of this as I'm trying to understand how they currently view their conundrum or their own, like, are they currently completely not in the driver's seat of their own life? Are they currently completely in a victim blame kind of a space? Are they admitting anything that might be theirs? just out of curiosity, and the preparation for this is deep belly breathing, relaxation, and making sure that you know that your job is to let them feel completely heard by you. At the end of 4, you should be able to recap what they said without agreeing with it, but recap it so accurately that they're like, yeah, that's what I said.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Third alternative. Yep. Next slide.
Quick question.
Mhm.
If you hear something from them that is alarming, like if they counter accuse, and it's something that frightens you as an employer, what are some?
Do you have an example?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, what if they say, well, you promised to help me and you didn't, and I will tell that to HR, or is this because I'm pregnant, right? Like, what if there's something where you're like, oh wow, this just got serious? Do you take the same approach? Listen, take notes, thank them?
I might get HR involved.
Okay.
If it talks about protected classes at all, I would absolutely note down what they said and say, if you truly are concerned that there's something in here that's not performance based, but is somehow targeting you in some way that's unfair, then by all means let's get HR involved as well, because it's important to me that you be fairly treated and feel fairly treated.
Okay. Good answer.
So what we want next is some kind of a plan for resolution, right? This is the whole idea of the PIP in the first place, is we want to come up with a plan that both parties can agree to. Assign them to co-create the plan. So it's going to be with our input, but I would prefer
you
not
probably have a
to.
template.
Yeah. I would prefer to not come up with the plan and say, here it is, here's what you need to do. I really want buy-in here. I want this to be bilateral as much as possible. Certainly, it's going to include more behavior. There's going to be a little bit shorter leash, right? So instead of waiting for the weekly one-on-one, I might commit to meeting with them every single day for 5 minutes at the end of the day to check in on how things went. Obviously, this has to be tied to results, but you can decide to what extent ultimate consequences are all about results, or if they include behavior or lack of behavior as well. We want to have some kind of a date here, and we want to have clear consequences for failure to execute this plan. But I think it's important both parties agree, yep, this is the plan. This is the plan. Ultimately, I feel like this is primarily their responsibility. I want to be, unless I have identified or they've identified for me my own shortfalls in this process, this is their problem. It's going to be their responsibility to come up with the plan. But one of the things I've seen occasionally is a rep who comes up with the plan and it's to increase behavior 10%. And I have to be honest here with them. If I don't feel like that's going to get them where they need to go, I have to reject the plan or counter with something different, because we both have to look at it and say, okay, if you do this and I do this, right, we believe there's a good chance that we can resurrect this situation.
Yeah, if you're 20% below quota and you have a 10% improvement plan, dude.
Yeah.
No. The plan is to get you at or above quota, not make you suck slightly less.
Not for 1 month, sustainably.
Yeah. And by the way, this is a good time. This is where your ride-alongs, you're like kind of looking over their shoulder a little bit, noticing that, oh, you're not using the automated tool for helping you build quotes. You're doing them by hand. It's taking you an hour. Oh, you're not doing this. You're not doing that. Like, there's tools available that they haven't taken the time to master. They're doing manual workarounds. It eats up all their time. It takes them off task.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Next slide. So there's encouragement which should occur here really throughout the entire process. This isn't necessarily a step so much as it is just a reminder that when we're in this PIP process, that we can tend to almost look at our rep as being an adversary, so somebody who's making our life difficult. And we want to remind ourselves that this is a person under our care. And we want to remind them of what they're doing well. You know, all the evidence suggests that catching somebody doing well is a much better way to promote good behavior than pointing out what they're doing wrong. Set them up for some quick wins if at all possible. Maybe you have a lead that you can share with them. Maybe there's an account that you can spend their way, or you can jump in and help close some business for them or with them. Focus on good form, not just the results. Meaning, how can they improve their technique, their strategy, so that this can be sustainable? Because it's a swing, not just the hit. I played tennis this morning, and trust me, I got to work on my swing. And then let them know what support they can call on, how you can be of help to them. Thomas, I think this might be a good point for you to spend a couple minutes kind of talking about the process that you have come up with and help people to implement.
Right. So because sales is in some sense mechanistic, unlike other areas of endeavor where it can be a little squishier, hopefully either you have identified or you can start to identify, as they're going from, lead nurturing through warming up, getting commitment, getting the person to take the quote, getting them to say yes. You're noticing where they're stronger and weaker, and the things they do well, they may not realize they're doing well because that's not the problem, and so their attention isn't on it. And if they start focusing on the thing they suck at, their good form in other areas falls apart, and that's the last thing you want. So anything they're doing right, say, you're doing a great job with upfront contracts. Keep it up. Build on that. That was brilliant. I love it. And keep pointing out the things they're doing well. For heaven's sake, as you're shifting these other things, don't lose track of the things you're good at, because that can easily happen. And if you can do a 3-to-1 ratio of encouragement to correction, that's a very good ratio to be in. And just tell them up front, look, I'm going to look for things that you're doing right as well as wrong, and please don't think I'm wasting your time. I just don't want to be so focused on change that you change good things into not less good things.
Yeah.
Because you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot right. Right? Okay, you're showing up and you're making the calls and you're doing X, Y, and Z, and keep that up and work in this one area. Mm-hmm. So it's the swing, not the hit, is, I think, absolutely crucial. Work on your form. The results will follow. Just focus on what's in front of you. Jeff, was there more that you wanted to direct me to?
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah. Thank you. We need to have ongoing accountability, right? We want to trust but verify what's actually taking place. And so when I've had reps in this situation, I want to check in more frequently. Have always been in the habit of 30-minute weekly one-on-ones. I found that to be the right cadence. But when somebody's in trouble, just like with the new rep, I'm not seeing them every week. I'm seeing them every single day. Maybe the start and end of every single day. We carve out 15 minutes. By the way, I will kind of challenge them by not allowing them free reign with me, but I'll say, look, 7:45 every morning, 5:15 every afternoon. I'm here for you, right? You get a half hour in the morning, and you get as much time as you want at 5:15 in the afternoon, so that I can help you. And that becomes a little bit of a test then, because are they taking advantage of that time? Or are they kind of off doing something else and not checking in with me? Because that shows lack of seriousness on their part.
Yeah, and you can say, hey, look, I put you on we had our PIP meeting last week. I gave you this time. Here it is, Tuesday, midday. You didn't come to me Monday morning or afternoon. You didn't come to me this morning, Tuesday. And I'm not seeing anything in your numbers that makes me think that you've made a step change on your own. Is there a reason that you're not coming to me for help? Mm-hmm. Like, I was kind of expecting that you'd be, tapping me a little bit more than you are.
Mm-hmm. And again, this was what when I was trying to avoid the PIP, and I would have this, hey, I should be putting you on a PIP, at this month, but I don't want to, because I still believe in you, and I still think there's a chance to turn this thing around. But what's going to be necessary is increased effort on your part and mine. us working very closely together. I need to see increased behavior from you to this tune. And you can expect from me this and this and this. Are you ready to roll up your sleeves and let's you and I work very closely together to see if a month from now we can just high five each other and say, well, thank God we didn't have to do that PIP thing. But when I say that, I'm giving them a gift, and I need to see an immediate and sustained effort on their part that they're more committed to resurrecting themselves than I am. Whenever you're more committed to somebody's well-being than they are, it's always a problem. If I'm a 10 on a scale of 10, you better be a 10. Because if you're only an 8, we got a problem, right? Therefore, I'm skeptical. My skepticism is not raised out loud, but I'm watching. I'm watching very closely everything that's being done, how it's being done, what's not being done, right? And I'm just making mental and sometimes written notes of it, because this is going to help me determine what I need to do moving forward.
Jeff,
I also, yeah.
can we dig into the mental and written notes? Because a lot of large corporations are making sure that managers are documenting everything perfectly. How important is physically documenting these conversations, and especially this stage, ongoing accountability?
So I do not come at it from a legal, a corporate, or an HR perspective. All right, this is just practical as a sales manager because I'm lazy and I'm efficient. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a sales manager, if Thomas is my star performer, then I'm taking some notes every week, but not a heck of a lot, right? But if Thomas is my laggard and I'm struggling with him, and particularly when we enter into this PIP process, I am taking notes. Now, it may not be quote unquote, but at the end of every one-on-one with Thomas, I'm making some notes of both what I observed, what I heard, sometimes it will be a quote, action steps, promises, excuses. I'm noting these things not so much to bust him, okay? It's because the next time we meet, I'm going to reference these things. So I'm a coach now, right? I do a lot of one-on-one coaching. I take notes. I have notes down here for my next 3 coaching calls, and I will begin by saying, last time you mentioned this, this, and this. Would any of it, can you give me an update on that? And what would be a good conversation for us today? In the same way, when I'm the sales manager, I want to make sure that when they come back into my office, that whatever they promised, whatever they said they're going to do, that we come right back to that, because it sets a level of seriousness for the ongoing relationship. They need to know I'm watching and I'm taking it seriously.
Okay.
And if they're falling short of my expectations, they need an honest assessment of whether or not they're on track. They may be doing the behavior, but the behavior is not producing the results necessary. They need to hear that. They, at Intel, they used to say, we encourage behavior, we reward results, right? And I think similarly, I want to encourage the behavior and pat them on the back for it, but remind them we need results. As long as you continue to do the behavior, you're going to get a little bit more leash, but it comes to an end at some point. We need results. So let's talk about why you're not getting the anticipated results from the behavior.
And one last thing about taking notes and giving people, verbal feedback that you then write down the fact that you did it. Part of your job in safeguarding the organization and delivering results to the organization is you need to be able to say in court, if necessary, yes, I told this person about their struggles, and your handwritten contemporaneous notes from your one-on-ones absolutely are admissible in court, should it come to that, which it won't because you got them. And if you aren't taking handwritten notes and you don't have any way of, well, I remember telling him, it's like, come on, no one should believe you. You owe it to the organization, to yourself, and to your direct report, your salespeople, that you take their performance seriously and you take notes in the one-on-ones. If you ever give someone a warning or raise a concern or whatever, you say, hey, by next week, can you do something about this? If I didn't follow up, you'd think I didn't care. Because I probably don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I want to point out here.
Follow up.
Your notes can be messy, your words can be misspelled, you can use weird abbreviations and draw arrows, and you can have hearts on there if you want, okay? You just
Absolutely.
have to have notes, that's all.
And the other thing that these notes will help you with is after you've said 3 times, hey, are you going to increase your call volume? Hey, are you going to work on your closing? Hey, are you going to do, get the proposals out faster? Whatever the thing is that they're stuck on. And they keep saying, yeah, they'll do it. And they don't. You now naturally, because they've said they would do something and they didn't do it, you now not only have permission, but you have an obligation to say, okay, I've got a new concern. You keep saying you're going to behave in a new way, and you're not doing it. And now it's not just a matter of getting proposals out. It's you're not keeping your word to me.
Right.
And this is what is known in the HR language is progressive discipline. You've just their repeated misbehavior has raised the stakes on them.
That's right. So Adam,
should.
if I'm your landlord and rent is $1,000 a month, you owe me $1,000. But if you only paid $900, right? How much do you owe the next month?
I guess 1,100.
Correct.
Yeah.
Plus
Yeah.
possibly a penalty.
Yeah, right. The same
Yep.
principle applies here. When they're on a PIP, if they only do 90% of behavior, again, accountability means that they have to somehow add that into what is going to be required this week, right?
So that brings us to one of the last slides here, which is an option.
Termination. Obviously, we want to avoid this, but some principles here for termination. Short and sweet, no explanations or apologies beyond what is necessary. They shouldn't be surprised when this takes place, right? The more you say, probably the worse it will go. If you need to have HR in the room, by all means do so and take their advice on how to do it. But what we want to avoid is why. It's like this has all been documented before, right? I have the scene here from Moneyball when he's telling the player he's been traded after Brad Pitt had demonstrated to him how to do it and how not to do it. It was short and it was sweet. You've been traded to the Cleveland Indians. Here's your plane ticket. So and so in the front office will handle all the arrangements. Your service here has been appreciated, right? We do not want to get emotional here. We want to remain stoic. If there's any emotional outbursts or threats or whatever, don't respond to those. Do answer questions about pay and logistics, right? About those important details. Monday's better than Fridays. Why is that, Thomas?
If you need to give somebody bad news, give them bad news on a Monday so they've got Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to start taking action. If you tell it to them on Friday, all they can do is stew over the weekend and get mad. Keep them in action. Keep them in productive action, even if it's looking for a new job.
Yeah. And sometimes one of the best things you can do for somebody is to let them go and let them know that you wish them well and believe that they're going to find something which is a better fit for them.
Yeah, I've been let go a couple of times, and every time it was the best thing for me at that time. Like it was a bad fit. I shouldn't be there. I wasn't willing to face it. I kept saying, oh, I can pull it out. I can do it. And I was hating it.
Yeah.
And it showed in my performance.
Yeah.
And I felt this initial, I feel rejected. I feel bad. And within a year, within a few months, I was like, oh, thank God I'm on to this new thing that's a better fit. So you have no way of knowing. Now, I'm not promising this will always be true, but think about this. If you've ever been in the wrong position, you're probably going to perform badly and you're going to hate life. And the best thing you can do for the person and the company is get bad fit people out of roles they're a bad fit for. And that might mean a lateral transfer inside the company in some cases. And in a lot of cases, it's going to mean getting out of your organization and maybe getting out of sales totally. But sometimes people have to get smacked by reality in order to adjust to reality. And sometimes that's your job, is to be reality for them.
Yeah, well said.
Just do it in a loving way, do it in an ethical way, do your part of the work so that you can hold your head high and know you gave them an absolutely the fairest shot anybody could ever have.
Thomas, what do you think? I know you probably don't have all the data on this, but how often do you think these talks lead to a resurrection?
It has a lot to do with the setup. If you hired somebody into a role they were a bad fit for, all this is going to do is get them out the door. If they really do have it in them to turn it around, and they just needed, the pressure, the call to Jesus, the oh my God, I can't keep phoning it in anymore. I did this once for a volunteer group where people kept showing up like at the last minute and leaving a little early and just phoning it in completely the whole time. And I just confronted the group and I said, look, there's two ways to engage in an activity like this. One is you do the absolute least you possibly can, show up like as close to the hour as you can, get out as soon as you can, give it as little mental time, and save your excess mental capacity for all the other things in your life. And you know what kind of results you're going to get from this organization? Very small. Or you can show up prepared, give it 100% of your focus while you're here, and make sure you squeeze all the value out of this limited time we have together. And this could be transformation for your life. And it's up to you how you want to engage. I know how I want to engage. I want the dirtiest uniform on the field. How about you? And the three people I was most talking to, all three of them decided that they were going to shift their behavior and start showing up and being real. It can't happen. And remember, ultimately, their success is not your job. You giving them the opportunity to succeed is your job. It's up to them whether they show up and do the work. Don't take responsibility for that.
I think one of the key questions that a sales manager, any manager, has to face when they have an underperforming employee is, do I still believe in them? You may ask yourself, would I hire them again? And the answer is no. But do I still believe that they have a reasonable chance of turning this thing around? And if so, what would it take? And what am I willing to do to be able to help them? And I think that if you're that kind of a manager who says, you know what, it's hard, but I'm still believing that this person can resurrect their position here, then you want to do everything in your power to encourage them while also holding them accountable to what's necessary. Because more than likely, there is a huge learning process that is occurring in this person's mind. I've seen this so many times when a salesperson starts a job. I've been this salesperson when I was younger. First 30, 60, 90 days, they're hitting the streets, they're setting up appointments, they're putting out proposals, they're closing business. They get their plane up to about 10, 15,000 feet on a steady climb, and then they just get overwhelmed and they flatten out at 15,000 feet. And they start saying, I don't have time to prospect anymore, and I can't do that. And this is where the manager, again, has to say, hey, you started good. But this plateau, you're only at 50% of where you need to be. We need to climb, and this is where they need help with things like time management, prioritization, work ethic, any number of things. But this is where the real manager begins to coach and mentor and train and challenge in the appropriate way.
So Jeff, so now somebody has taken all of our feedback and it's working. We've gotten them to a level of success. Now what?
Well, we want to engage in good management practices going forward, right? So we want to just, again, hit their identity. Way to go. I believed in you. I knew that this was possible. And ask them, what have you learned throughout this process? And what is it that you see that contributed to you being able to turn this thing around? And listen to what they say and affirm that, and add in 2 or 3 things yourself. I think you also did this. I think you underestimated yourself. I think you now believe in yourself. I see the confidence that you have, right? Reinforce these things as much as we possibly can. And then let's fly even higher. Let's see if we can get them to tackle some bigger goals. Because once somebody turns something like this around, they start to think to themselves, what else is possible for me? And we want to fan that flame.
Thoughts or comments from folks? Andrew, Cody, Josh.
Nothing for me, but I appreciate it. This has been great.
Super. In a minute, I'm going to ask you what specifically you might be doing differently as a result of being here today, but hold that thought for now. What else do we want to cover there, Jeff, Adam?
Yeah, well, so it's interesting. I have potentially one of these coming up in the next week or two. I have to wait for some other leaders. I have to connect with them, but I'll tell you, I had obviously I was involved in the planning of this, but I had two very big takeaways. One, if you feel it, say it gently, right? The confrontation, I'm a little confrontation averse. And then the other one is I really liked encourage behavior, reward results. That one really resonated with me because like we have a person who is doing all the right things, but it's not quite coming together. And I feel like I have some extra tools now to confront this person in a non-angry, non-disciplinarian type of way, which is how I think a PIP is viewed a lot of the time.
Yeah. Can I say a little bit more on confrontation?
Please.
So again, it's often perceived as a bad word, and I think most people, have some level of discomfort with it. And yet, I had a manager when I was down in Sacramento at the television station, GM of the station, and he was giving us a pep talk one time, all the managers on annual reviews, and he was really excited. He says, "These are fantastic." We're like, "No, they suck. We all hate them." He's like, "No, this is your one opportunity a year to look your people in the eyes and shine a reflection of reality to them. This should be exciting to you." And we're all like, huh. Now, of course,
That's
once a year,
thing ever.
no, that of course that's not enough. I mean, it really should be
Okay,
an
try to
on.
imagine bowling, and you go bowling, but there's a curtain in front of the pin, and the ball vanishes behind the curtain, and you can hear something happening back there.
Right,
And
right.
about once a year, your boss comes out and says, "You're doing okay, but you need to go a little more to your left there on those."
Yeah.
It's like, how are you going to bowl better? You can't. There's no feedback.
Well, to your point, Thomas, it isn't once a year, but at least once a year. The reason why I brought it up is that the more that we're in touch with reality, the healthier we are, and the better lives we live. And if we can help our people to embrace reality as well, the reality about their situation, about cause and effect, that this is not luck, they are not a victim, that they have the ability to affect change and accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. Many of our reps that we're dealing with, they have what we call head trash. They have self-limiting beliefs. And so when you enter into this process as a caring manager of bringing reality to them, you're doing a huge favor, and you do it because you care.
Well, at this point, because I know folks have meetings to get to at 1, including you, Jeff. Guys, I put our contact information up here. Actually, Jeff, as of when's your last day at Schneider? It's coming up soon, isn't it?
I'm not leaving Schneider, I'm leaving Sandler.
You're right. When are you leaving Sandler? Thank you.
End of February, and my email will be schneidertrain@gmail.
Okay. Yeah, so you spent, what, 17 years there?
17 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Long time, and love it. And salespeople and sales managers are still my people, and I will continue working with them. But moving in the direction of one-on-one coaching going forward, and very, very excited about that.
Okay. Thomas, when should people reach out to you, and for what reasons?
Reach out to me if you want to get on the forward edge of managing performance for any team, any unit. I've got a new offer that I'm looking to beta test called the Unit Performance Makeover. It's not just for sales, it's for any unit, large or small. And I walk you through what it means to be a manager and how you can proactively manage performance for any unit doing anything. It's a fairly new offer of mine, and I'm very excited about it.
Excellent. Okay. And I'm Adam Morris. I own Salesforce Recruiting, and we recruit sales professionals nationwide. So with that, I will let all you guys hop off. Thanks for being a great audience, and let me know if you have any questions.
Stick around. Feel free. I know, Andrew, you unmuted yourself at one point, but I think I cut you off. Josh, Cody, you want to stick around? We'd love to chat for as much time as you'd like. I'll stick around.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Pleasure.
Right
Thanks,
on.
Jeff.
Jeff, thank you. Adam, thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I apologize. I do have to jump off. I have a one, but I really appreciate this. Thanks.
Yep.
All right, and guys, I think I'm going to take off as well
Spears.
since I have 1 o'clock.
Yep.
Thanks everybody for coming. Adam and Thomas, excellent. Take care.
Thank you, Jeff. And Andrew, Josh, I'll stick around until you hang up or until the top of the hour hits. We could have 5 minutes of silence if you'd like.
I just wanted to thank you for your guys' time. I had some really good takeaways. I'm a new service manager, so had some really good takeaways. Took a lot of notes.
Great.
Formerly, I thought PIPs were kind of negative in a way, but now that you guys showed me and talked about the 3 things that are needed to make a good PIP,
yeah,
a lot of great takeaways, and looking forward to improving my team, myself, and the future of the 2024.
Absolutely. I've got some free templates and things. If you're interested in any of that, I can send it to you. Just drop me a note.
Absolutely, will do. Thank you for your time.
I'll stick my email in chat here before you go. Hey, Josh.
Yeah, I was going to say +1 to what Andrew said. Andrew and I are actually partners. We're area managers with neighboring areas and work together really closely. But yeah, a lot of this was really eye-opening for me. One thing that really stood out was the optimal pressure. I think I have a habit of basically putting the minimal amount of pressure necessary on instead of kind of maximizing pressure. That was a big takeaway for me.
Right.
Also, a termination. The more you say, the worse it goes. I have a bad habit of kind of over-speaking and softening the blow as much as I can, I guess. And that's something I definitely will take away from this.
I will give you a quick visual on that stress concept here. Let me see if I can share my screen properly. I'm not used to Teams. Window. Yeah, there we go. Tell me if that's visible.
It is.
Yeah. So you'll see
Take a
this
screenshot of that.
Yeah, and I can send it to you if you'd like. Just drop me a note. So you'll see that this horizontal is CNS is central nervous system. It's how much stress or arousal a person's under, and when they're understressed or unstressed, their performance is relatively lower compared to whatever the optimal stress is for that activity. And then you get past that optimal zone, and of course, as stress continues to go up and up, they get into distress. But this optimal state is called eustress, EU, which is the Greek prefix for good, like euphonia and so on. And what I point out to people is if you're managing somebody and you see their performance is at level P, you don't know inherently whether they're at P1 or P2. Are they understressed or overstressed? Now, you can look at them if you know them well. If you're familiar with them as a human, you could probably tell pretty quickly. But then again, you might only guess. And some people need less stress to perform better, and some need more. I tend to need a lot. If I don't have a deadline and some sort of something at stake, I'll tend to phone it in. But as soon as you tell me, oh, there's an audience, or oh, there's deadline, or oh, there's money at stake, or there's your reputation, like you give me some stakes, and I will generally perform better because I tend to be a pretty relaxed person. I tend to be on the left side of this hill a lot of the time. And of course, over time, by the way, easy tasks, we tend to have an optimal zone that's further to the right. The easier the task, the more I might need to wake up to do my best. A really hard task, any stress at all is hard. And then with stress training, you can really open it up and get optimal performance for people over a much wider range. And this just takes practice and mastery.
That makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I always, even as far back as high school, I did better on the test than I did on the homework. And I don't know why I didn't. Yeah, and I don't know why I really didn't think about that
That's just
as
how
a
you're
piece of
wired.
leadership. Yeah,
Yeah. And you just got to
that's definitely
experiment
interesting.
or even ask them, hey, would you do better with a little more pressure or would you do worse? What do you think? Oh, and if you ask me that, I'd say, yeah, more.
Yeah,
I'll
as
rat
I already
myself
think about,
out because I want the high performance.
sure, as I think about my team sitting here, I can already tell who I think would perform better and who I think would perform worse. So definitely,
Yeah. And don't assume you're right. I mean, you want to test
right,
this out like a
sure,
scientist. Yeah. Well,
that
I'm
makes total
glad
sense.
that Andrew, Josh, I'm glad you got value out of this. Thank you so much for tuning in. Delightful to meet you. And Vicky, yeah, I'm happy to send you a link to the recording, and I'll ask for a download of the slides from Jeff. And we'll probably get that out to all of you, actually.
All right,
Hope
well,
that
I
helps.
appreciate your time with this. This is definitely helpful.
Brilliant. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.